interferes with effective problem solving, both by making individuals more pessimistic and also more abstract and less able to access specific details of how to resolve a difficulty. Okay? And this includes dysphoric mothers with infants under 12 months. So this is wild. So what this means is like, this is something that is in your brain. And like, forget about all these like complicated, histories and high school this happened and college this happened. Like we can study the effects of rumination and how much it causes problems with like mothers and infants who are like 12 months. So this effect can be observed over there. So it's really like a neurological effect. It happens in the brain. And so what happens when we ruminate a lot is we develop this abstract thing. And if I ask someone who feels like a loser, how well do you understand your problem? They will say, I understand it incredibly well. The reason that I'm an incel is because of X, Y, Z. I'm not trying to bash on incels. Because of this and this and this and this and this and this and this. I understand everything. The black pill is real. I read so much research. It's so true of so many people's experiences. My understanding is great. My understanding level is 100. What are you going to do about it? Nothing can be done. I don't know what to do about it. I can't think of any solution because I am a loser. This is the problem with rumination. Because when we make an abstract conclusion from these highly specific actionable scenarios, we end up with a conclusion that is not actionable. So it keeps us stuck. It also makes us pessimistic, which is a big problem because not only does it enhance our negative emotional circuitry, but here in my nucleus accumbens and my frontal lobes, anytime my brain thinks about doing an action, should I go to the gym? Then what my brain does is it calculates the probability of success of that action. So should I go to the gym? And what does the black pillar do? The black pillar says there's no point in going to the gym because going to the gym doesn't make me not a loser. It doesn't correct for all my social skills. It doesn't like correct for all of the things that I missed. It doesn't correct for the fact that I have an avoidant attachment style. So any point of progress is insufficient at solving this big abstract thing. This is the effect of pessimism on your mind. So when you have negative emotional stuff that's being amplified and you have a pessimistic thinking, it decreases the value of action. And once the value of action goes down, then your motivational circuitry basically says it isn't worth it. And if y'all pay attention to people who are red pillars or black pillars or whatever on the internet, you will notice a couple of very, very simple things. The first is look at how abstractly they're thinking. Are they thinking concretely or are they thinking in big sweeping generalizations? And the second thing is look at the value of progress in their mind. Do they say, okay, like if I have this problem, does moving forward in it help at all? And they say, won't it help at all? It doesn't matter. So progress becomes useless. And when progress becomes useless, that's how you get stuck in time for years. The next thing to consider is that rumination increases self-focus and amplifies the vicious repetitive cycle between negative mood and cognition, wherein each increases the likelihood of the other. The focuses attention on the discrepancy between one's desired state and the actual situation, making this discrepancy more salient, okay? In vulnerable individuals, this pattern of mutual amplification between negative thinking and negative mood produces an emotional cascade in which rumination can lead to very intense levels of negative affect. Okay, so what does this mean? So when we ruminate, what this does is it focuses on where we are, where we want to go, and it highlights this gap. And the more, so I don't know if this kind of makes sense, like making progress in your life involves moving from here to here, and then here to here, and then here to here, and then here to here. But that's not how rumination functions. It doesn't think like that. That's the whole problem. What it does is it looks at the gigantic gap between where you are and where you want to go. And it just highlights all of your shortcomings. This is the way that it becomes an emotional magnifier. And this is one of the mechanisms through which it interferes with problem solving. Because we're not thinking about the next step. Our mind is literally focused on all the things that I'm doing wrong and how far I have to go. So here's the problem. Here's my actual state. Here's my desired state. And what ruminators will do is instead of moving towards happiness or progress, what they tend to do is this feels bad. And what they try to do is move away from feeling bad. They don't try to actually move towards their goal. They simply try to move away from this state. I'm not going to grind to improve my life. I just want to stop feeling this way. There's one last really damaging thing about rumination, which is that it makes you less sensitive to contextual changes. Okay, so let's take a quick look. So rumination has been hypothesized to make ruminators less sensitive and responsive to contextual cues and events in the world around them, including signals of potential reward, changing contingencies, or interpersonal reactions. Such abstract and internal preoccupation could prevent ruminators from adaptively responding to changes in the environment or from benefiting from corrective learning that disconfirms negative beliefs. This, I think, is arguably the most damaging thing about rumination, is that if you make some conclusion about your life, I am a loser, and then you're at work, and then someone at work is like, hey, you want to hang out sometime? You get some kind of signal that you're not a loser. You get some kind of signal that, oh, actually, there's an opportunity right now. There's actually contrary information to your belief that you're a loser. You're not stuck in this situation forever. The nature of rumination makes it so that you are unable, or it is more difficult for you to change, to detect changes in your context. So if you induce rumination, so induced rumination interferes with contextual sensitivity, reduced responsiveness to infant vocalizations in mothers with generalized anxiety disorder or major depressive disorder, and reduced sensitivity to infants in mother-child interactions for both dysphoric and non-dysphoric mothers. So this is important. So we may think, okay, like this is because everybody's depressed, right? That's why they're not responding to changes in the context and changes in the world around them that afford them new opportunities. No, so these studies actually show that if you take a mother who has an infant and the mother is non-dysphoric, so the mother is actually totally doing fine, and you induce rumination in the mother, she will become less sensitive and responsive to the vocalizations of her infant. This is how deep this stuff actually runs. So the most devastating thing about rumination is even if your circumstances change, and you can make progress, which happens in just about every patient that I've worked with who ruminates, the rumination interferes with your ability to see those kinds of changes. So then you feel like you're stuck forever. So now let's try to recap and understand where this picture puts us. So if I'm someone who's a ruminator, I have one negative event, and then I sort of play that over, and I multiply the damage times 10. So this turns into dot damage instead of a single instance of damage. Then what happens is I may have a second negative event, and then I may have a third negative event, and then I sort of end up making an abstract conclusion. Now that I'm a loser, I have negative emotion, I can't see any concrete action, I become pessimistic, so it's not worth trying, right? And then this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because if I add these three things, then what happens? Oh yeah, I am a loser. Look at all this evidence, look at all this evidence, look at all this evidence. But in the same way that if we induce rumination in non-dysphoric mothers and they start to have problems with their infant, something very cool happens. If we can stop rumination, a lot of these problems will start to get better on their own. Because the rumination in and of itself is what is creating the problems. And this is something I want y'all to really understand, because this is kind of a mind-blowing moment. At least it was for me. See, when you ruminate, you think about your problem. So you think the problem is out here. You think the problem is what you see in the outside world. That's not the problem. The problem is in here. The problem is the way that you are viewing things. The rumination literally impairs problem solving, literally magnifies negative emotion. So there's one additional problem that is super scary about rumination, which is when we get stuck in this cycle, ruminators tend to be more avoidant. So goal pursuit that is focused on avoiding an undesirable state rather than approaching a desired state may make it hard to make sufficient progress towards the goals, as it provides little concrete guidance regarding necessary steps and may be hard to definitively resolve. High trait ruminators are more likely to have avoidance goals than low trait ruminators. So if we disable the rumination, a lot of things will start to get better. So then the question very naturally becomes, how do we do that? So the first is that rumination is triggered by negative emotion. So this is what's really weird. In your brain, when your amygdala activates, when you start to experience negative emotion, it triggers in a habitual way the ruminative thought process. So if you start to have a bad day, then the rumination triggers. Now, here's what we need to do. We need to separate ruminative from problem solving, right? So all rumination is going to do is make us think more and more abstractly, is going to polarize our thoughts, and is going to interfere with problem solving. So this sounds so weird, but like when we ruminate, we think we're trying to figure out a problem, right? We're trying to find a solution. It actually is very bad at doing that. So here's what we need to do. When we ruminate, usually it's triggered by a negative emotion. This negative emotion needs to be dealt with separately. So if you're ruminating, you're not going to solve your problem. So we got to start solving our problem outside of rumination, separate these two things. Instead, what we need to do is some kind of focused emotional regulation technique. So you can do Nadi Shuddhi Pranayam. We teach a lot of stuff about, emotional regulation. Check out Dr. K's guide. It'll really help with all this kind of stuff, okay? Deal with that negative emotion. Once the negative emotion is gone, then what we want to do, or we're not feeling that negative emotion very actively right now, stop the rumination. What we want to do is then we want to engage in problem solving. So problem solving should only be done when you are happy. Only be done when you're happy. There's a second aspect of problem solving, which is remember that the reason that our problems feel unsolvable is because we're overly abstract. What can I do today to become no longer a loser? That's not something I can do. Maybe I can work out, maybe whatever. There's all kinds of practical things I can do, right? But it doesn't feel like it works. So instead, what we need to do is really focus on concrete thinking and watch out for the pessimistic angle. So what we need to start doing is acting. We need to start thinking in a very, very concrete way. And this is where the solution that I want y'all to do is the solution that will be insufficient. Watch out for that pessimistic thinking. Don't quit something just because it isn't going to work. If it is moving you in the right direction, then you should just do it. It's as simple as that. So watch out for that negative kind of thinking. The third thing that we need to do is look at our context and improve context. So even if you feel like a loser today, chances are your situation is different than the way that it used to be. Chances are that for each situation that you think makes you a loser, there was some context that was contributing to that. And now you may say, oh, but I've fallen so far behind, there's no way I can recover. The context doesn't matter. That's the ruminative thinking. That's the pessimistic thinking. That is the thinking of insufficiency. So what I want y'all to do is really be on the lookout for any opportunity for change. Look at, okay, is this person like inspiring me a little bit? Could this person be like one of my writing buddies? I could review their writing. They could review my writing. Is this person maybe like this person asked me if I wanted to hang out sometime? And then the pessimistic thinking is like, oh, they're not going to want to date me or whatever, which is totally fine, but I'm going to hang out with them anyway. So be very, very sensitive to changes in context. And here's the other critical thing. So when I work with people who ruminate, one really good way to tie this all together is to try to improve your context. Don't worry about solving your problem, because nothing is going to work to solve your problem, right? What can you do to increase your context? Let's say you're alone and you don't have any girlfriends or whatever, boyfriends, whatever. What can you do to improve your context? What can you do to put yourself in a situation where a girlfriend or boyfriend is more likely to arise? Can you make platonic friendships with people of the opposite gender and then ask you to hook you up with someone, maybe set you up on a blind date? If you're struggling in the professional side, can you start to do a little bit more networking, talk to your boss a little bit, focus on the context? Even if you are a loser, look at the environment around you and how can you improve your environment just a little bit? If y'all do these things, then there's a good chance that your rumination will improve because we're targeting the rumination directly. The last thing that I'm going to leave y'all with is a meditation. So this is where, when we get stuck in the cycle of rumination, there's one meditation that I found it really helps my patients a fair amount, which is the meditation of what's the next thought. So anytime you have a thought, anytime you start to ruminate, one thought leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, but you're trapped inside those thoughts. Oh my God, then this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, this is gonna take a step back, because this is what I ended up doing with my patients that ended up getting the supervisor uncomfortable with me, is I started teaching them things like this. I started teaching them what's the next thought. Go meta for a moment and observe the process of rumination. Just ask yourself, okay, brain, what thought is next? Okay, brain, what thought is next? Okay, brain, what thought is next? We don't dwell on the thought. We don't wallow in the negativity. Okay, now you're upset about this? Okay, fine. What are you upset about next? What's the next thought? What's the next thought? What's the next thought? So this is very important to understand, because when we ruminate, we are inside each thought. And oftentimes we don't have the strength of will to control or disrupt those thoughts. We can't stop the chain. So we're going to do something else. We're going to float above it and we're just going to ask the brain, what's the next thought? Okay, what's next? Okay, what's next? We're not going to get caught up in it. What's next? What's next? And something really cool will happen. The chain will run through, but you won't get emotionally amplified by it. If you are getting emotionally amplified, that means you're getting lost in the, oh, then this is going to happen and this is going to happen. No, let it run. Just let it run. Okay, bro, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? And if you use this exercise, you may find that it calms you down a little bit, and then you can engage in the contextual problem solving.
Turning 40 this year and everything.
Red pill content.
Right now. It's like not where I wanted to be. I haven't succeeded at anything. I haven't even tried. Like, I don't even know anymore. I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to cope with anything. And I don't know how to, I did this whole growing thing wrong. Like I'm supposed to be an adult. I'm supposed to be able to handle these things, and I can't handle anything. And I literally am just realizing, like, it's been 40 years of this, and like 40 years of just being confused and not knowing and like figuring things out slower and like not like I haven't built anything. I have nothing like to show for this.
I could help that. I definitely could help that. I'm pretty sure I could figure out some shit there to help that person sort out their mind. What might be expectations, what has a place to actually be there and what hasn't. Because she's confused indeed, and there's reasons for that. It has to do with conditioning and what she deemed to be normal, which is subjectively or factually not true. There is no such thing. I'm closing in on 40, and my life has been a mess in all kinds of different ways. It's just that I accept the situation for what it is, right? There's plenty of ways that I could... I should feel bad about my circumstances. You know? I messed up so much stuff. I messed up relationships. I messed up so much money. I messed up my health. You have no idea. But I could never end up like this. I'm never going to have that sort of a moment where I just break down And ultimately, it doesn't have anything to do with like either being